Thank you for tuning in to Coffee with Klingman, where we talk with some of the most interesting people I know over a good cup of joe. Today in the cafe, we're talking with international speaker, author, and coach, John Brubaker.
What I really respect and admire about Starbucks as a corporation is when you work there, you're not like a cashier, a server, you're not like a coffee maker. You're they don't even call them baristas. You're a partner. And I think that is not just semantics. That's something that any business can apply. You should feel like you're in partnership with your your employees. If you're an employer, they don't work for you, they work with you. And that's a subtlety, but it's also an important reminder, and it's something that a lot of employers have lost touch with. You know, the Gallup Corporation does a survey every year about employee engagement, and it's something like 7 out of 10 employees are actively disengaged.
Crazy.
So if you think about that, like I'm an old lacrosse coach. That's kind of my background. There are 10 people on a lacrosse field at a time. So if 7 out of 10 people don't, well, A, they're actively disengaged. B, they also, this is some other research that was unearthed, they also don't understand how their individual role actively connects to the end product that, like in the case of Starbucks, gets served to a customer, or if you're a manufacturer, what you produce that gets shipped to, let's say, your retailers. They don't understand how their job connects to the big picture. So as like a coach, that's kind of the equivalent of 7 of your 10 players, who are all 10 on the field at the same time, running the wrong direction, trying to shoot the ball in their own net or the wrong net. That would never happen in sports. You see it happening and playing out all over corporate America. And it's kind of a scary thing. So if you can find a way to keep your employees engaged, much like Starbucks does, by investing in training and development, and then also by treating them like they're vested partners. And if you're employee-centered, you're automatically going to be more customer-centered. You know, I love how when I worked in academia, and 12 years in academia is enough to drive anyone into the private sector. So many places talked about we're going to be a student-centered school. Well, you can't be student-centered unless you're faculty and staff-centered first. Otherwise, they're going to feel disenfranchised and exhausted. And if you're faculty and staff-centered, the natural byproduct is they're going to feel really good about serving the students well. So there's your business lesson, compliments of a basic white with 2 pumps of coconut syrup. Thank you, Gabe. And if people want to learn more about Gabe Klingman and your podcast, where do they go? So we got our podcasting equipment here. Tell them about the podcast.
All of it.
What's it called? Where do you find it?
So the podcast is called the Paradigm Shift Podcast. Okay, there we go. You can find it on pretty much any of the social media. So we got Facebook, we got Instagram. I even put up a Twitter. We have a YouTube. And
Is it on like iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all that stuff?
It will as soon as we post these. Yeah.
Sweet.
Exactly. So you'll be able to find it pretty much everywhere you're searching for it.
Wherever podcasts are sold for free globally.
Exactly.
Thank you, Gabe. That's a review. Awesome.
That was pretty great. So it's funny that you went into that. One of my, like, what I'm going to school for to kind of get you catch up to is...
Are you recording?
I am. It's been recording this whole time. I'm going to just have this as the intro. This is pretty great. So what I'm actually going to school for, I'm finishing up my bachelor's in psychology, and then we'll cross your fingers. I've gotten the okay for my master's to go to William James in Boston and get my master's in organizational psychology.
Awesome. William James is the founder of the positive psychology movement.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge. It's amazing. But to literally go to exactly what you're saying is because I've worked at Starbucks for so long. I worked under incredible managers, Laura Stacchino, who I'm hoping to get on here pretty soon.
Absolutely.
And like Amber and all sorts of amazing managers. And I've also worked under some terrible ones that I won't name.
Yeah. Isn't it funny though? You tend to like learn the most from the people you had a bad experience with or who are negative.
Much.
Yeah.
And because of that, like the lessons that I learned from the positive ones, I was able to take and apply to the managers that were horrible, that wouldn't treat their people right, that would outright disrespect everyone. It was horrible. And so I was able to like create my own team, but then I realized I can only create a team so big. Like no matter how far I go, like in the last 7 years, I have worked and trained over, I think I did like 112, 120 people in the last 7 years. I've like managed that many, which I'm stoked about, especially like being 26 now. But like at the same time,
you're kind of an old soul for 26 though. Like you are wise beyond your years.
Thank you. I'm looking to catch up to you, man. So thank you.
So let's remind everyone out there in podcast land how you ended up at Starbucks.
I thought you might bring that up. So I ended up at Starbucks because I took this fool's class on public speaking, and he did an exceptional job. And I believe you were my main reference for the job.
Mr. Brubaker, I'm looking for a job, part-time job. Do you know of anywhere, and could I use you as a reference? Let's go over to Starbucks. I want to introduce you to some people. And it's really interesting. I'm going to take full credit for all your wonderful experience there and the fabulous relationships you built. This is me patting myself on the back. What I find really interesting about the whole thing, and verify this for me, there are certain people who absolutely 100% thrive in the Starbucks environment and culture, and as employees there, like they're just swimming in the Kool-Aid right away.
100%.
And you know, it's not their first work experience. They've been other places and it just, quote, hasn't worked. But there's something about that environment and that structure that people like just sometimes get hooked and really buy in and love it right out of the gates. You strike me as one of those people where like you just knew right away, hey, this is going to be a good fit. This is going to be a real healthy environment for me. Is that accurate?
That is so accurate.
And you see that with a bunch of people.
Yeah. So it's funny, just to expound on that a little bit from what happened on my end. I worked as a security guard to put me like through college. I could study while I was working, even though I technically wasn't supposed to. Happened.
Where was this?
This was at General Electric.
Okay, so they let you carry a weapon?
No, so they didn't. So I would. There was this.
You're just naturally intimidating.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I could see that.
Yeah, I am a very intimidating.
So
person.
someone's listening to this and not watching the video cast. Picture like the biggest bouncer at a bar or a nightclub you've ever seen in your life.
That's me.
That's Gabe.
That's me right there. Oh yeah. So now I have to do the rest of the podcast in this voice. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool.
There you go. So
I worked as a security guard, and then went from there. The reason why I transitioned from there is like when I went from there, I went to Starbucks and I was like a $5 pay cut an hour. Yeah. Starbucks. I took a $5 pay cut an hour. I was making like 13 and I went down to like 7 something.
Yep.
And I went from full-time as a security guard to part-time. I went from consistent hours every week to who the hell knows, and you're getting called in on your days off. And I did it because I knew, exactly like you had said, I knew the environment. I knew the culture. I knew a lot of people who worked there, and I knew it would be a good fit. Yeah. And it worked amazingly. Yeah. Almost 7 years later, it was a pretty good career.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was pretty stoked. And I do have you to thank for that.
Full credit right here. Taking it. Yeah, I have a wife and 2 daughters. So you can imagine the amount of stuff I get blamed for that isn't my fault. I am going to take credit for the few things and sort of hijack all of the credit for those things whenever I can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'm here for you. I can help you with that. Yeah.
Sweet. What do you got there?
Oh, this?
What is that?
This is just a
You bring a book to read?
I do. I bring a book no matter where I go. So, for all you who don't know, there is this dude. I don't know who this guy is. John Brubaker.
Never heard of him.
Crazy kid from what I've heard. Stadium Status. Incredible book. Y'all should read it. Absolutely amazing. Taking your business to the big time? I was going to say next level. That's always the
Either
rank.
one. That
To the
was
big time.
almost the
I
subtitle.
had a feeling it would have been. Yeah. I like the big time, though. It definitely works with a stadium status idea.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Very particular question.
Okay.
I was doing some research on you, even though obviously I've known you for 1,000
Stalker
years.
alert. Stalker alert.
I've known you for like 1,000 years.
Yep.
But so I did not know this about you. You got named, what was it? Forbes, one of the top 10 no BS consultants.
Yes. You want to know the funny story behind that?
I knew there was going to be a story. I'm stoked.
So my second book, Seeds of Success, had just won 2013 Business Book of the Year at the Hollywood Book Festival.
Hell yeah.
Does that sound, I'm not honking my own horn. Does that sound like an accomplishment?
It does.
Okay, so my publisher sent a press release out to a bunch of media outlets, one of which was the Sun Journal here in Maine, announcing that it had won this award and it was going to be adapted to a screenplay for a major motion picture. And their response was, this isn't really newsworthy. We're not going to run this or do an article or on it or interview you.
You're fucking kidding.
No. And a week later, I got named to this Forbes top 10 consultants who avoid the BS or whatever it's called, the no BS consultants. I'm like, So I wasn't good enough for the local Sun Journal, but I was good enough for Forbes magazine.
Absolutely.
And that's not a disparaging comment. Well, it kind of is against the Sun Journal. But what it revealed to me, and this is kind of like, I think that everyone's in this story. What it revealed to me is you can never be a prophet in your own land. And sometimes you're a little too close to, whether it's the media or, other professional colleagues, peers, whoever, in your own backyard. You need to kind of step out of that environment to get that kind of recognition that you deserve. Because like familiarity sometimes isn't a good thing, like in that case. So that's kind of the interesting story behind it.
Wow.
Yep.
That's hilarious.
But I am kind of a no BS guy.
You were, I would never have guessed.
Bachelors of Science, or are we
the Bachelors of
different
Science.
BS?
Okay,
Is it different BS?
Must be a different BS. Yeah. That's funny. You are one of, I said this before, but you are one of the most polarizing and opinionated people I have met.
I'm not. I concur.
How has that impacted in like your business? How has that impacted how you've grown it?
I haven't always been that way, and
That surprises me.
It surprises me too. Like I think that. So as a kid, my mouth got me into trouble a lot, whether it's talking back to my parents, teachers, being a class clown, whatever it was, just like disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing with authority figures. I have a little trouble with authority, if you hadn't noticed. So my mouth got me in trouble as a kid. And sometimes your greatest weakness when you're young becomes a good strength when you're older. So now I get paid to run my mouth, and people, have me travel out and speak to their company. Like I worked in broadcasting for a couple of years. So it's kind of interesting how the tide turns, but I wasn't always polarizing. I was always, when I realized as a kid, like, you got a big mouth. It kind of gets you in trouble. Like I tried to be a people pleaser and get along with people, even when I didn't necessarily agree with stuff. So I then found when I went into business for myself, that doesn't always help you. That's actually counterproductive because you're not being true to yourself. You're not being authentic. And newsflash, you can't please everyone all the time.
No way.
You are not a pizza. You cannot please everyone all the time.
Pineapples on pizza.
Pizza can please everyone. You can't. So you're better off from a marketing and sales standpoint, practicing what I like to call repulsive marketing. Repulsion, or you want to repel the wrong prospects or suspects in that case. And in the process, by being polarizing, repelling the wrong people who your message is not for and does not resonate with, you're, as a byproduct of that, going to attract the people who are right for you, and whether it's your product or service, your brand. So you got to repel in order to attract. It's kind of like a magnet. It's connected to one side of another magnet. It'll click. If you flip it over and you do the quote polar opposite, they're going to kind of push away from each other. And I think the same thing holds true in business. And the sooner people can get to that place in their mind and then put themselves out there in that way in the market, the better off they're going to be. Like, that's something I wish the light bulb would have gone on for me years earlier, But yeah, that's why I am the way I am.
Interesting.
But it didn't come naturally.
Interesting. So do you think that there's a lot, there's way too many people who are trying to be people pleasers in the consulting or in the business in general area?
But I think there's people pleasers, and that's kind of the way some people are wired, but it's also like we have this need to feel like we're supposed to fit in. And you're not supposed to fit in. Like, everybody's different. You're supposed to be yourself. But like, when you think of, let's say, a business consultant, you think of a certain stereotype. And like, you think of like stereotypes for everything. And, in certain things it's unfair, but it's always sort of grounded in the truth or reality. Like, that's the way it is because that's the way it is. And there's like a stereotypical way a quote business coach, business consultant ought to walk, talk, look, sound, whatever. I love it's kind of a funny definition of consultants. Consultant's someone who's going to borrow your watch to tell you what time it is and then send you a bill and send you a bill for that and probably keep your watch.
I love that.
But
I love that.
That's sort of the stereotype. Like, so I avoid using the term consultant at all costs. At my core, I spent 12 years as a college lacrosse coach. At my core, I'm a coach.
Yeah.
I'm still a coach. My audience has changed. I'm still coaching people.
Yeah.
And there's still so many parallels. But yeah, I think that, we're all different and we shouldn't strive to fit in. We should strive to be yourself. I hate to bring up politics, but it's a relevant example.
It is.
Like the last president we elected got elected not by like towing the party line and saying the same things that have always been said. He got elected by being himself. Whether you like him as himself or not, he got elected because he was, quote, keeping it real. Now, you can dive into, did he keep his promises? Did Mexico pay for the wall that we still don't have yet or what? You can go into that on your own. I don't want to talk about that. I just want to use the example. Like, there's somebody who was being himself and just kind of being true to who he is. And I think there's a lesson in that for all of us,
Damn. That's actually pretty sweet.
Yep.
So with that, I have...
that's my dog barking because there's no one at the door. But
I would bark if there was no one at the door.
But we're boring the hell out of him right now. So he wants to have something to do.
It's like, here we go.
He's very misunderstood. He's a supermodel.
I did hear about this, yeah.
So they can be a little quirky and egotistical.
Every supermodel I've met is.
Yeah, I bet you roll with a lot of supermodels too.
Them,
so this is very accurate if you're listening to this.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Every supermodel Gabe has met is like that.
Every single one.
Sweet.
Yeah. You said something. I want to dive deeper into that because I just really want to understand where you're coming from with this.
Okay.
So you say everyone needs to be themselves, right? Do you feel like that is a universal thing, or is that an American thing? Like, I'm looking at cultures. You have Chinese culture, a lot of the Asian culture in general.
They're very deferent. Yeah, they defer.
Yes, they prioritize family and fitting in and what's better for the collective as opposed to what's better for the
what's
individual.
best for the company, even if it means like injuring myself on the job and being a perfectionist. And so when I talk about this, I'm talking about hashtag America. I think it's a very American thing. And that dates back to when the country is. That's kind of the ethos we were founded on. We don't want to be controlled. We want to have our personal freedom. Kind of funny how we've gotten away from that a bit. But that's sort of what we were founded on. These different personalities come together. not pretending to be somebody that they're not. So yeah, I think they're very different cultural elements when you, like for example, climb the wall and head over to Mexico. It's probably different than it is here. Or go up, even go up to Canada. What's the stereotype of them? They apologize for everything. They're too freaking nice,
I have many stories to back that up.
Yeah.
That's actually how they are. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got pulled over there one time. It was like 2 a.m. We were driving. I was in a band. We were driving to a recording session. Got pulled over because we were going way too fast. And the officer came over and was like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know." I'm going into like an English accent.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we go. He's like, "I just want to let you know you were speeding. I just wanted you to slow it down, okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, so sorry to interrupt you. Have a great night." It's like, okay, that's not how Americans do this. Not at all.
He's probably thinking, I'm going to be the best thing that happened to these Americans, because if they got pulled over in America, they'd have been shot with an AR-15.
Yes.
That's exaggeration, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they're just entirely too nice up there. Yeah.
Interesting. So do you think like people in the American side of business, if they took their ideas and they tried to apply it in the Canadian side, for example, wouldn't thrive because they have a very different culture. It's a very different way of doing things.
I think it's different. It's not like diametrically opposed to the way we are. I mean, the further you get away, like off this continent, probably the more different it gets. So I'm going to give you a little throwback. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Gung Ho with Michael Keaton.
Nada.
So this Japanese automotive manufacturer decides they want to open a plant in the United States. And they pick this location somewhere in the Midwest, I think. And the unions kind of force them into hiring some American workers. And they find like the American workers are lazy. They don't work really hard. Like being on time is a suggestion, not a requirement. Like, so they make a lot of mistakes. They don't care. And that was their stereotype of the Americans. And Michael Keaton was like the liaison, sort of like the American plant manager who was there to kind of bridge the gap between the American workers and then the Japanese executives. And they were explaining to him everything that his employees are doing wrong. And he just decides to, here's how we're going to break the ice. We're going to go out for drinks. So he takes them out to a bar or restaurant, and they go have drinks. And these guys have to go to the bathroom. He's like, why don't we have a contest where we piss for distance? That's what we like to do here in America. And the Japanese executive looks at him. He said, in Japan, we piss for accuracy. and like so. I share that story because I think that kind of encapsulates like this is the way it is in America in the workforce, and this is the way it is in Japan. You want to do things big, perfection isn't necessarily always a priority. Speed tends to be a priority. And in Japan, it's all about like flawless execution, Kaizen, getting 1% better every day. And it's a throwback reference to an old movie, but it's also at the same time, it's kind of funny how times haven't really changed.
Yeah.
That was like 1970s.
That's pretty much how it is today. Yeah. Do you think we've gotten too far away from the perfectionist aspect or having things perfect? Or do you think that's more of a hindrance, kind of like Gary Vee talks about a lot? Or
yeah, I was just going to say technology changes everything because it's all about speed execution, being first to market, beta testing. And like if it's an app, you want to have beta testers and, we'll get it to market and we'll launch and iterate. We'll get it to market and then we'll tweak and, work the kinks out of it. Which is interesting because you see other things sort of follow suit when it comes to speed. Like the media. It seems to be more important in the media today to be first with a story than to be accurate. And that's kind of a scary place.
I've never thought about that, but that is actually really a good point.
And, I hate to bring up politics again, but you talk about...
Do you really, though?
Okay. You talk about like hashtag fake news.
Yeah.
Well, before Trump was ever beating that drum, there was fake news because people were in such a hurry to get the scoop and be the first to press or the first online with whatever, that a lot of times they got it wrong because they didn't fact check and get two sources. They took an anonymous quote from someone and ran with it. But yeah, technology has made us in some respects a little too fast, a little too loose, a little too lazy, intellectually lazy. In other respects, like we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now without technology.
It's so true.
So you take, just like any generation, I think you got to take the good with the bad.
Have you watched the TV show Black Mirror much?
Not at all.
Okay. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it. I watch so little TV. It's embarrassing.
That's fair.
In part because I live with 3 women. And the dog doesn't even report to me. The remote control certainly doesn't report to me. I report to my kids. My kids report to my wife. I report to my wife. They watch what they want. When they're not on TV and I can sneak downstairs and watch TV. If I'm not watching a little college football on the weekends, I watch a show I think you'll love on Discovery Channel. My friend Gina Paris told me about it. It's called Undercover Billionaire. We can dive into that.
I love the idea of this already.
Yeah, we can dive into that later. I want to hear about Black Mirror.
Okay, so Black Mirror, it takes the concept of technology and runs with it into the future. They primarily focus on the negative, which to make a good story, obviously. Yeah. But it's very fascinating. They've done so many concepts, like having contacts that record everything. No, that's fine. Having contacts that record everything that happens. And all you have to do is...
Dude, that's already happening anyway, isn't it?
There's definitely...
Like my iPhone's listening to us, and Amazon's going to start advertising, black clothing and mirrors to me, probably.
All of the above. Yeah. Yeah. That is actually a really good point. We are definitely on the way.
But if you think about, like, there are cameras everywhere now. Like, they're very... Okay, so the thing that happened in Chicago with Jussie Smollett, or however you pronounce his name, the actor from Empire, who claimed, like, a couple of Trump supporters, like, put a noose around him, beat him, and threw bleach on him.
Oh, dang, I haven't heard of this. Okay.
So he reported a false crime, and as the police were investigating, there were cameras on the streets, like in front of some shops or at a traffic light or whatever, that recorded none of that happening where he said it happened.
Wow.
So like this is very like Big Brother watching us everywhere. And in some ways, like it's good because now there's like a different level of accountability. In other ways, it's kind of scary that things are so invasive. So if you think of like public accountability, I know this is a little tangential, but think about how much customer service has changed now that we have social media.
Oh, it's a completely different world.
So like if you're mad at, I don't know, Time Warner Cable.
Who isn't?
Yeah. You go onto Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and you start ranting about it, and you tag their Twitter account in the post, and boom, magically you'll get a direct message. We're sorry you're experiencing technical difficulties. How can we help you solve this?
Yep.
Now, if you hadn't have made that public, and you just called the 1-800-NO-SERVICE or whatever the customer service hotline is, you're getting treated very differently privately. So public accountability is, in many ways, I think, a real good thing.
Do you think we have that much accountability?
Can you clarify that or expand upon that?
Yeah. So
before I put my foot in my mouth.
That's a fair point because that was a very vague question.
Because I'm fence sitting on this answer already. And so elaborate.
What I mean is specifically when you mentioned, okay, that we have these, with this instance in Chicago, was it?
Yep.
Okay. That there was this guy, he made this false claim. Police were able to look at these cameras, back it up.
Yeah.
So there's accountability in that sense where we can check people's actions. Is there accountability? Do you think we have enough accountability? And this is a really tricky question. And I think you know where I'm headed with this. Do you think we have enough accountability in a case like his where there wasn't a crime, but it was a false committed crime?
No, I don't, because he got off with just like a fine, which as a celebrity and a Hollywood actor, he can afford to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not picking on him or that situation. It's just indicative of society in general today. I think we have too much accountability sometimes in the wrong places and not enough or not any in the wrong places. So you look at accountability in government, it's almost non-existent.
It's sad.
And then you have accountability to the extreme in education. Like teachers are responsible for students' test scores and outcomes when they're not responsible for those students the other 17, 18 hours of the day they're not in school. If you're a teacher, you're not able to ensure that that child got a good night's sleep the night before the exam, had breakfast that morning, had heat in their home, or like was able to bathe, like had the basic essentials, or, has health care to make sure they're diagnosed and either, have a learning disability treated or like they're diagnosed as to not having, there's so much that they're accountable for that's out of their control. It's staggering. And they're so grossly underpaid for what they do at the same time. And someone's going to say, yeah, but they get June, July, and August off. Show me a teacher who doesn't have a part-time job all summer. Come on.
For sure.
So, yeah, it's not all like lollipops and puppy dogs for them. But like, it's just too much accountability in some places. That's one example. And not enough in other places where it's really needed.
Couldn't agree more. Now,
we agreed on something. Holy shit.
This is a rare moment, guys.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's because as a society, we are in this whole, again, we're going to go a little more of a touchy subject as well. We're in this whole movement where we're not allowed, or it's socially frowned upon to say anything or do anything that might offend someone. Do you think that has put a hold on how much accountability we can have?
How much time do you have? Here, I love this. I love this topic because it speaks to everything, really, as a society that we're founded on. You talk about the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of press. So right now, today, we're in a dangerous place because people are so... It's almost like we want to be offended. Some of us.
Yeah.
Not me. Like, you'd have a really hard time offending me.
I have personally, you don't know this, I've personally tried to offend you on multiple occasions over the years. I don't think I've succeeded.
I'm bulletproof. Yeah. No, so the example I'll give you is comedy. So there's a comedian.
I was just posting about this and talking about this last night.
I love stand-up comedy because I think you have to be a real... Some of them might seem like goofballs. I think it's the hardest art form. I've taken 2 stand-up comedy classes. I don't claim to be good at it at all. I'm a writer, and I have a hard time writing comedy. So I think it's one of the hardest art forms, and they're just seekers of truth a lot of times, and they use humor to speak to broader issues, some comedians. Others are just goofy and want to make you laugh and have fun. But when they can't speak freely about things, that's kind of a dangerous place. The example I give you is a comedian, Jeff Dye. Jeff, D-Y-E. At Jeff Dye on Twitter. And he just posted a video recently why he doesn't do gigs on college campuses anymore. And he has this comedy bit about, I don't even know what the actual bit is about, but there's one line in the bit where he talks about the differences between men and women. Men are a little larger than women, which is fact.
Yeah.
So he was on a college campus, I'm assuming, doing a gig, and people got offended because no, men and women are the same.
That's just not factual.
Yeah. So like feelings are not facts, but there's an entire population of people. I won't say generation because I don't know that it's generational. It's an entire population of people who are more worried about feelings than facts. Their feelings. Yeah. Your feelings can be wrong. Facts are facts. It's a fact that men and women are not the same. We're different.
Yeah.
And on the average, men are larger than women.
Yeah.
We tend to weigh more. We tend to be a little heavier or a little taller.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
The fact that
so he's kind of been banished from, doing gigs at colleges because that's not PC to say that. It's crazy.
That blows my mind.
It's such an extreme position. It's an extreme example. But I give that to you because there are countless others that he's just one example.
That is crazy.
Yes, I think we've gone a little bit overboard in like worrying about being offended and kind of PC culture. Yeah.
That is a beautiful example. That's exactly right. I couldn't have said it better. There is
He's a hilarious comic too. So those kids don't know what they're missing by not getting him on their campus. That's the sad part. The guy's hysterical.
So Jeff Dye?
Jeff Dye. Yeah.
Jeff Dye.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't enjoy comedy that much. I know. This is
You're a funny guy, really?
Thank you.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. I never have watched
I'm offended
comedy.
by that.
Good. Finally succeeded after 8 years.
I'm here on my safe space now.
On your safe space.
So triggered. I'm shook.
Oh God. Oh, shook. That triggers me.
I'm triggered that you're triggered, that you're
you.
offended that I've offended you.
Okay.
Somebody get him an adult coloring book. So
I actually am going to take a completely tangent on something you just did, and I want to run with that. As you're pretending to be offended, you went and grabbed your phone.
Pretending.
I'm going to just run with that pretending. Yeah. You went and grabbed your phone. You're like, I'm going to find my safe space. That has become its own world. And that's exactly what you were pointing out. And I just want, for those who are listening, I wanted to point that out. That has become its own world. And this is something I love talking about. I think I've brought this up in every interview I've done. Mm-hmm. Do you think people have lost or are losing the art of social connection?
Can I text you my answer? So I'm going to give you a Starbucks example. This is when I knew we've lost the art of social connections. A bunch of years ago, right around when you were in my class, sitting in the Starbucks at the community table. It's like picture table. This table seats 6. Picture table that seats twice as many is twice as long. You know the table I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I'm sitting there drinking my coffee. I'm on my laptop, checking my email, completely disengaging and being antisocial with everyone around me at the ironically named community table. Minding my own business. I don't know anybody at the table. I see these 2 girls like 3 or 4 seats away from me, and they're sitting across from each other. They each have their device in their hand. One would like be thumbing something out on her device and smile, and the other would look down at her phone and go and giggle, and then she'd thumb something out and smile, and the other one would smirk, giggle, shake her head, roll her eyes, do what she'd have a reaction. Oh, wow. I'm like, holy shit. They're sitting 3 feet away from each other, and their entire conversation is taking place on their phones. They're texting when they could be talking.
Wow.
We've reached, that's when I thought, and this is probably 2011, we've reached a point of no return with this stuff. That's crazy.
And it's only gotten worse since then.
So I looked up, I'm watching this, and they see me watching them, and time out. Can I ask you two something? I'm sorry to interrupt whatever work you're doing at the table here, because you look like you're working independently. Eye roll. Hashtag sarcasm. Are you two having a conversation on your phones? They looked at me like I had an eyeball growing out of my forehead, a third eyeball growing out of my forehead. They're like, yeah. Oh, wow. I just asked the weirdest, dumbest question ever. Of course we're texting 3 feet away from each other and we could be talking. Now, I was just curious because we're not at a library. You're allowed to make noise here. Mm-hmm. One of you invited the other to come here and meet you here. You could have done that from your dorm room and the cafeteria, wherever. You could have been anywhere in the world and done that. But you got together? It's crazy.
That blows my mind.
Yeah. And that's kind of when I knew, all right, that's the canary in the proverbial coal mine, so to speak. That's how I know we got problems.
Wow.
Did you hear there's a research study? I read it in the Daily UK, which is a legitimate
I freaking love the Daily
article.
UK.
Yeah, they shoot you straight.
Yeah.
And it was that this generation of Gen Z, not millennials, Gen Z, are growing like this bone that almost looks like a horn, like in the back of their neck.
Okay.
And it's from hunching over and looking at their phone and texting all
God,
the time.
don't say that.
So, like, anatomically, these devices are changing the bone structure in an entire generation's freaking neck.
That's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
That is nuts.
Yeah. So,
And coming from a public speaking teacher, like, this has to drive you crazy.
yeah, I mean, I probably err to the other extreme. Like, I try not to put too much stuff up online for like the online classroom or Blackboard or whatever it's called. I want to hand grades out in person, and I want people to like communicate with me directly if they need to miss class, they're going to be late, they have a question about an assignment. Like,
I remember you were always pretty good with that.
yeah, I try and be really analog about it because I think there's so much lost in translation. You can't read tone of voice in the email or text. People hide behind their keyboard and they'll say things they wouldn't say in person. Go ahead, say it to my face if that's really how you feel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not how you feel, but you can pretend to feel that way when you're typing it, or, you know. So I think at the end of the day, we're in the business education, and that helps people communicate like mature adults, being really low tech. As strange as that might sound to a millennial or a Gen Z listening to this.
Wow.
Mind blown.
Absolutely. That is amazing, though. Like, I don't think enough educators. So actually, this is a silver bullet, or there's two sides to this story.
And remind me, I got to tell you something when you said, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So there's two sides to this. First off, I don't think enough educators have that opinion. I don't think enough, and this is me being an outsider. You, as an educator, could correct me if I'm wrong. But from the outside, and for someone who's gone through it and is going through it, I don't see enough people making an effort to teach someone how to function in this society. They teach their subjects really well. Like, you can teach and learn everything you need about that topic. But you were one of my favorite teachers, and the reason is because you taught me how to behave outside of class. You taught me things that was necessary in the class, but wasn't necessary only in the class.
It's a life skill.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of things, and a lot of subjects that are life skills that don't get taught. So two things. You're right. And I'm not like saying, oh, I do this and no one else does. I'm just saying observation after 3 decades in higher education. There are a lot of professors and teachers who don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of cater to the lowest common denominator. Oh, I'll just throw this up online. And the proof in that is there's a facility in downtown Portland. I think it's in the old port right on Congress Street maybe, but it's called the School of Adulting. Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So this whole like School of Adulting where, and it's got national news.
This is insane.
Which is cool that it's got national news, and at the same time, tragically sad that it's even a necessary institution.
Yeah.
But all the credit in the world to the founders for finding an opportunity and wanting to make a difference.
Yeah.
They are teaching all the skills that young adults need to function in normal society that they're not getting and should be getting in school.
Yeah.
So they're leaving school and going into the workforce grossly unprepared, not for work or like whatever industry they're going in, grossly unprepared for life. Like, wait, you don't know how to balance a checkbook? You have to learn that at an adulting school. And credit to them for doing that. It's a cool concept, but that's how you know, like, there aren't enough life skills being taught, or like the curriculum in a lot of places is off a little, maybe a lot in some cases. And I think we've become overly reliant on technology to a fault. Like, it's great that, you know, having your textbook on a Kindle has driven the cost down for students. And technology is great in a lot of ways, but when you're offering a public speaking course online.
That's just insane.
Yeah. So I was asked, do you want to teach an online section of public speaking? I'm like, how would that work? Well, students would like shoot a video, Skype video, talk into their monitor and give their speech, send it to you, and then you would grade it. Like, well, then wouldn't that be private speaking?
Yeah, that's not public at all.
Yeah, like you don't get to read the audience, read the room, make like a human connection with eye contact or, engage your crowd. Like
nothing.
And this is a course. I'm not criticizing the institution I teach at. This is a course that's offered all over the country.
Yeah.
Online.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. So it's funny. I'm actually going to school online right now. And it's the first time I've done it this year. I think I'm finishing it up. And it's crazy. It's a totally different world because I spent the first 2 years in person. It's super. So that's where I think it's two-sided because it's convenient. I can do this. I can work my full-time job. I can go to school, make my own hours, make it fit. But you lose so much.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to turn the tables on this interview.
I love that.
So there's this whole concept of class participation in an online course. I've taken one online course. Never again. Like, you couldn't pay me to take an online course. And class participation in an online course is contributing to like a message board, leaving a comment on a post, emailing your instructor or a classmate. And so my question for you is, how do you feel about that format? And do you see other people doing this, or does it feel like you're really just kind of checking a box? Because I remember this class I took, you were required to have, we'll call it 20 class participation touch points.
Yep.
Not like you actually participated, but like touch points, meaning you made a comment, you liked the post, you asked a question. Touch points.
Yep.
So it just felt like you're kind of ticking the box. Oh, I'm at 15. I need 3 more. I'll like this one, comment on that, and ask a question, even if I don't have a question, just to get to 20.
That is.
What's been your experience with that?
100% exactly how I feel.
Do you hate it?
Do I hate it? I am not learning through it. It is easy, so it's not that it's not that I hate it, but I'm not learning, so I feel like I'm wasting my time.
And you're paying for it, so you're wasting your money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very pointless, I think. And so my question to follow up with that, as someone in the education system, so the good side of technology and the education system is that it has enabled people who wouldn't typically be able to go to college now that they can. Is there a way, do you see or have you thought of any better way to do it as opposed to something like those just touch points?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think there's a lot of value to hybrid courses where like sometimes, let's say you meet every other week in a classroom, like weeks 1 and 3, you meet in a classroom. Weeks 2 and 4, it's an online portion of the course where you log into the portal and you do whatever it is you do. I think there's some value to that, and that would kind of be like a compromise to it. But there's no question, some people just learn better live and in living color. I know that because I'm one of those people.
Same.
I need the human interaction, and you feed off of the energy of the room, 100%. Like the example I'd give you, because you're a musician, is there are some musicians who go on Facebook Live and they have like, it's called like a virtual tip jar through like PayPal or whatever it is, where they post it in the comments and they can get their fans listening to their Facebook Live performance. They do like a short set or whatever. And you're playing by yourself in a room or studio or wherever, your basement, whatever it is. And you're just looking at a screen.
Feels so hollow.
Versus, being in a theater, amphitheater, bar, club, whatever your venue, coffee shop, if you're an indie artist, and being able to feed off the energy of the crowd, seeing what they like and don't like, based on their facial expressions,
in the moment,
their movement, any of that. You can't tell what someone likes or doesn't like based on like, oh, when did they throw a little change in the virtual tip jar? So that's a non-educational example that I think is just as relevant. And some people are missing the boat on that. It's kind of sad. I love going to live concerts because you feed off the energy of the crowd. You get to experience the band or the artist or whatever in a very different way than you ever do on Spotify, Pandora, the radio.
Totally different.
Their CD, whatever it is. It's totally different.
Yeah.
And it's so much better. I think as a society, a lot of people are craving this and don't even know it. They're craving that authenticity. You know, like I just learned this and it makes a ton of sense. But apparently a lot of songs are like edited for radio and they cut out the big guitar riff in the middle of it because it would just be longer than like 2 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever formulaic, you know, equation the radio stations use to gauge like, oh, people don't have an attention span longer than this. You go to the live show and you get this kick-ass guitar riff or, you know, like an expanded third verse that you don't hear, the secret third verse to a song or whatever it is. And it's so much better.
So much better.
And like
as a musician, I love that.
So I think media, educators, you know, employers, everyone thinks like we're in this short attention span society and it's, you know, social media is like a tweet's 140 characters because people don't have attention span. And remember Vine videos, like the 7-second videos or whatever, where it's because people don't have attention span. We'll explain binge watching something on Netflix for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Explain the popularity of long form podcast content like Joe Rogan's 3-hour episodes, these marathon episodes. People magically seem to have attention span for those things. So it's not that we don't have an attention span. It's like you're not doing a good enough job engaging your people. They're bored because it's not interesting, because they're not learning, because, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But we still have an attention span for what we want.
Beautifully put.
We've gone on quite the tangent here.
And I'm loving this
I'm going to
tangent.
jump off the soapbox.
To kind of take this to take it another tangent. Since we're talking about technology, one thing that I've been racking my brain around, and I feel like you have a lot of opinions on this as well. Leadership in a digital age. How has everything, like how could a virtual team, how has that impacted the way people lead a team, in your opinion?
I think like when you have Slack groups and different ways you can quickly get messages out to the masses, it's great. Like think about response time, problem solving when you're trying to, you know, like supply chain management or whatever it is, get a product out the door to a customer. It's awesome. It's great. But then like you get to take the good with the bad. There's a downside to it because people are using convenient, quick methods of communication as a crutch or to a fault when, you know what, you really ought to get up, walk 8 feet to the other side of that cubicle and look the person in the eye and tell them something. So an example I'll give you is my daughter tried out for a varsity team, and the way she found out that she didn't make varsity, she got cut, was via text message.
That's really sad.
Yeah. I know someone who was in a long-term relationship and her boyfriend broke up with her via a direct, not a text, but like a direct message on like Twitter, Facebook Messenger, or whatever. Like
that hurts.
Yeah, got dumped by DM. Like there are certain things that you just shouldn't do digitally. You need to have that real face-to-face, person-to-person communication, like negotiating salary, things like that.
Oh, I can't imagine that happening digitally.
Go back and forth on email. Like you need to sit down with a person, and then you can tell like how bad they're bluffing.
Yeah,
you know,
so true.
Or just like you're ending a relationship or whatever it might be. you missed out on the job. You got cut from the team. Like, so I think a lot of times it's not so much that it's quick and expedient and we can be super productive by doing this. It's like we're lazy and we're cowardly.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you for
I'm going to
saying
take
that.
the easy way out because it'll be less painful for me. I don't care if it's more painful for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's just horrible.
Absolutely.
You know? So I think that's like, we need to put the human back in humanity by kind of recognizing you shouldn't do that in certain situations.
It's
like,
so
like picture like a contractor who is building a house. Mm-hmm. Could they build a house if all they had was a hammer?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it would come out really bad and it wouldn't last. And that's kind of what we're doing is we're relying on this one method of communication, texting or just like technology as a crutch. That's just one tool in your toolbox, man. And you can't, like, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That doesn't mean it's going to come out good, you know? So I think there are unintended consequences to everything, and leaders who rely on technology too much, they're going to have some disenfranchised employees who would have appreciated a real adult face-to-face communication.
That's beautiful.
Conversation.
Yeah.
So that's my theory on leadership and technology and kind of where we're headed.
So
can you imagine this conversation taking place? Like, man, you shouldn't have handed that letter to Paul Revere and put him on that horse. You should have gone yourself and met with the person. Like generationally, you look back, like, and there's probably a generation of people who thought, like, yeah, do I mail the letter or do I go see the person? Like, so this isn't a new problem. It just, the speed of it has changed and it just looks a little different. But
do you think part of the reason why, so I'm kind of putting these together in my head as we go, but part of the reason why is to make that connection to what you had said earlier is, as American culture, we value speed and efficiency above so much more. And so now technology allows us to amplify that so much at the cost of respect, at the cost of that human connection, and of that, of being able to connect with that person.
Yes. And I think what it's also doing is it's, we're damaging relationships in ways that we don't even realize until after it happens that we've done that. So it's kind of scary and I kind of don't like it. I haven't, that being said, like, I don't have a flip phone. Like, I have a smartphone.
I've been thinking about getting one for a while now.
So one of my friends just bought all of his employees flip phones. Wow. And they can choose whether or not they use technology to reach out. Like, what he found was they were working on the weekends because customers could text them and email them. They were checking, every 20 minutes or whatever it was. So, like, just, I think it's about creating boundaries and him giving them flip phones and saying, you don't have to be on your smartphone and you don't have to give them the number to your flip phone. Like, that's for your family and friends and people close to you, and you use that in the weekend, and they just know that if it's an emergency, they need to call you. Here's your flip phone. I think that's a really nice perk that some of them may not even take advantage of.
This is literally exactly what I was thinking about on my drive over, because I work remotely for a company called Rome, and I'm a project manager, and I am working 7 days a week. And because of that, like, my girlfriend gets so upset with me all the time because we'll be in bed about to go to sleep and the phone will go off and I'll have to respond to a message. I'll have to work with a bunch of manufacturers in China.
Are they in a different time zone?
Yeah, exactly. A bunch of manufacturers in China, and like everything I have to be tied to my phone, or I make that decision to be.
Yeah, as you say, you choose to be.
I choose to be. And so this morning I was thinking about how could I help the relationship, and one way would be to literally go back to a flip phone and take my smartphone, because it comes with all these great things. But how often do I use all of these great things?
Yeah.
Not that often.
I have a bazillion apps. I don't even know what they do. Yeah.
Same. Like, if I really desperately need to find something on Google, there's guaranteed to be a friend near me who has a smartphone and can look it up for me. Like, all I need is to be able to text, take a couple notes, some voice recordings. That's pretty much it. Some calls.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the idea of like it's choice we make that we want to work or we choose to work like at night or on the weekends or whatever. What's really interesting is you look at work-life balance. And that was
So glad you're bringing this up.
That was not even terminology that was in the American lexicon until there was a personal computer in every home.
Yeah.
Like back in the 80s, work-life balance became a thing. It used to be that you worked wherever you worked and you had a time card. You punch in on the clock when you worked, you punched out when you went home. And there was a clear-cut boundary. Okay, I punched out, work's over. I'm punching in, I got to get locked in and focused on my job until 5 o'clock or whenever, whenever the shift is over. And that changes. There's a personal computer in every home. And it changed exponentially more when there's a personal computer the size, that fits in the palm of your hand, that has the internet connected to it anywhere you go pretty much in the free world. And you can email and do everything off of that thing that just sits in your pocket all the time.
It's crazy. So with the work-life balance, this is something I'm
not being rude. I'm looking something up on my smartphone that I want to make a point with. So go ahead.
Please do. So this is something I thought a lot about, and I would love to hear what you think on this. I don't think work-life balance is, I don't think it's desirable. I think what is more desirable, and this could be my young naivety, but I think what's more desirable is to find something that you are passionate about. Because if you hate your job, if you absolutely despise it, I was a waiter for like 3 months and it was the worst thing in the world. So much respect for anyone who does that, because I could not stick with it. I could not stand it. I went home. I think I went through like a bottle of wine every 2 or 3 days. It was rough. And I had literally left after like 2 or 3 months. I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. Hated my job. I would literally spend all of my time recovering from my job. It's hilarious.
Go ahead.
And so all of my off time, I was thinking about how much I hated it.
Yeah.
I would go in at the last possible minute, go home and have to recover from it.
But you weren't working, but you were thinking about work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now when you love your job, like right now, I love what I do. I absolutely, it's so much fun.
So you could be working 60, 70 hours and you enjoy it and you do it because you enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah. And when people say work-life balance, from what I've gathered, it's typically this: I work 40 hours a week and then I like cut it off. And if you have a job that you don't hate, but you don't love, then that's necessary. But I don't believe that should be the ideal. Do you agree? What are your thoughts?
So I use the term work-life balance because people understand what I'm talking about when I say that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that on a day-to-day basis there's such a thing. The example I give, because I have a lot of coaching clients who come to me because they lack balance.
Yeah.
I'm the perfect person to work with them because for so long I lacked balance.
Yeah.
I was always on, workaholic. So what I have them do is I think it's the easy way to do it is you get 3 jars and you get an enormous jug of BBs. And for every hour you sleep, you drop that many BBs in the sleep jar. For every hour that you spend working, you drop that many BBs in the work jar. And for every hour that you spend doing something that isn't work or sleep, you drop it in that 3rd jar.
Oh, wow.
Now, at the end of a day, you're not going to have anywhere near the same number of BBs in those 3 jars. At the end of a week, maybe. At the end of a month, perhaps. At the end of the quarter, you're going to have close to roughly the same. If you're leading a healthy life and you're getting a good 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep on a regular basis, at the end of the year, that jar should be those 3 jars should be roughly full. Now, it's a labor of love to really track that like that,
No kidding.
but it's a great visual.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in work-life boundaries.
That's a great way to put it.
You have to create a boundary. So when you're on, you're on. When you're off, you're off. You're not thinking about it when you're not doing it, you know?
Yeah.
So to that whole point,
Yeah.
have you ever heard of PVS?
PVS, no.
How about ringxiety?
Anxiety, no.
It sounds like
Sounds
it sounds like one of those pharmaceutical commercials.
Absolutely.
Ask your physician about ringxiety. Symptoms side effects may include
Everything in death.
everything, rectal bleeding, death, heart palpitations,
Typical
hemorrhaging.
weekend.
Yeah.
Typical weekend.
So anyway, ringxiety and PVS
PVS,
are the same thing. PVS is phantom vibration syndrome. And that is something which, according to Scientific American, 90% of people suffer from PVS. And that is thinking your phone is vibrating in your pocket, or like feeling what you think is your leg vibrating from your phone when it did not, in fact, ring or alert you to anything. I mean, it has programmed us to think that it's happening even, or hope that it's happening even when it isn't.
That is crazy.
That's scary.
That is...
Yep.
It's crazy that there's actually a literal term for it. It's actually like not just, some people experience it. It's like, no, this is an actual thing. Here, 90% of the population are experiencing this, so we have to give it a name. Mm-hmm. That's nuts.
So that's how you know it's gotten bad, right?
Yeah.
I admit, like, I've checked my phone because I thought I felt my leg vibrate.
Happened to me
And
yesterday.
It's actually my phone's completely off.
Yeah. Wow.
No, it didn't vibrate. That's me being crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And to think, I like how you worded that. The phone has programmed us to think that.
I mean, it's trained us.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
People, we think as a society, as humans, we think that we are so above technology and that, we are the masters. But in reality, we are not the masters. The phones have trained us. Yeah. We're not even the masters.
Social media algorithms have trained us.
Yeah. Everything has.
There's someone out there watching this, listening to this, saying, "Oh no, it hasn't." That same person, I would venture to say, I'll challenge you with this, probably goes on Instagram and clicks the little discovery button at the bottom of it. You know why the discovery button's there? Because our brains are programmed to love novelty. That button should be called novelty button. We're programmed to love novelty, and what it does is when we see something novel or new, like bright, shiny object syndrome, we get like that dopamine drip coming out of our brain. That's the same effect that you get from taking a hit of a crack pipe.
Yeah.
So yeah, our devices have trained us.
That's literally crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like we're not even in control of ourselves. We are controlled by love. We're controlled by fear, by our emotions, by so many things outside of us. We are not the masters. We're in fact the servants.
And social media does a masterful job of, see what I did there? Masterful job of manufacturing those emotions in us. Like if you look at what's trending, it's all like doom and gloom because they know that fear is a primary driver and creator of attention.
100%.
You know, people fear the stick more than they value the carrot. You know, it's just kind of that survival instinct, and you know, we're going to immediately, go to like the negative thing that's trending, not like, a picture of a puppy dog, eating an ice cream cone. We'll go to that second.
Yeah.
We'll probably retweet that, but we're gonna look at like the shocking footage from an earthquake or like
that always surprises me.
The hurricane damage of the Bahamas right now. So I really try and limit my social media consumption. Do you have one of those tracker apps on your phone and your computer?
So I used to. I actually did it with a friend of mine. every day we would text not only our screen time, but what our most used app was. Not every day, once a week, every Sunday, we'd get an update. And as an accountability, we would text it to the other person, which was really embarrassing for the first month and a half.
Shame is a powerful motivator. I
powerful.
firmly believe that. It's not necessarily people are like, oh, you shouldn't feel shame. You shouldn't shame people. It's bad. No, actually, it's pretty good sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. Like, that's the best way to learn. Yeah. It's the fastest way to learn.
I use an app called Rescue Time. Which you can install. And it basically stalks your laptop in the background and keeps a running tally of like, oh, you spent 8 hours and 6 minutes on Microsoft Word this week. It gives me a report on Sunday night, the end of my week. And it'll tell you spent X amount of hours on Facebook and whatever social medias. It tells you exactly like how much time you invested, spent, and wasted on different applications. It's very revealing.
I don't think people will download that. Do you know why?
Because they'd be afraid of what they would find out.
They'd get offended.
Yeah.
Their algorithm and the fact would offend them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I would encourage people to do something like that.
Absolutely.
Like, just think about how much of your life you can get back by, like, just realizing how much time you're wasting on trivial things that don't matter.
It's crazy.
So, what's your take on building a business through social media?
What do you mean by that? What's my take on it?
Okay, so here, I'll give you an example. There is I use this term loosely, Instagram influencer. I wrote about this the other week. I forget her name, but she has like 17 million, quote, fans, followers, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
She's an influencer. I think she does like makeup videos and stuff. And she decided, I'm going to start an apparel brand. And I have all these fans, so I'm going to get some T-shirts made. Now, the third-party print-on-demand T-shirt company that she was going to work with required a certain number of, a minimum order number in order to print. Ooh, what is Quincy?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Quincy, chill out. So that's my daughter getting off the school bus. So they required a minimum print order, which is 24. And she hired a professional. Quincy, stop. He doesn't listen to me. She hired professional models flew them out for a photo shoot, a makeup artist, and got some sample product, a professional photographer, videographer, all this stuff for photo shoot with, it wasn't even her in the apparel, and it's her product line and they're her followers. She had these models, and when she posted on her Instagram and her Facebook and her Twitter and everything, my shirts are out, here's the link to go order. She didn't get enough orders to hit the print minimum to be able to fulfill the orders. That's so crazy. It was 24, let's say, 24, which is kind of the typical number. You need to hit a minimum print minimum. Sure. Let's say she got 11. She had to go refund those 11 people because she didn't and this is someone who had millions of followers, and millions of followers does not equal revenue, does not equal real customer support or engagement. It's it's false fame, it's false celebrity. That's what I'm talking about. These influencers, it's really a house of cards. And what's that girl really influencing? Anything?
Very little.
You can't move 24 T-shirts. You're not really influencing anything.
I could go door to door and sell 24 T-shirts right now.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's why I ask you, what's your take? Because you're of the younger generation. You're millennial / Gen Z, right?
Yeah.
Which one are you exactly?
26 years old. I'm born in 93. I don't know what that makes me, to be honest.
Younger than me. But so you've known life before social media, and you've known a lot of life after.
Exactly. I've known both sides.
Yeah. So what's your take on building a business through it?
So
given the example I just gave you,
I would say,
my stance on it.
Before I started actually studying business, and before I actually started studying working for businesses that have been built from the ground up, working as an entrepreneur and saying, what does it actually take to put food on the table?
Yep.
Before I started that, when I was an employee, I would have looked at 7 million followers and I'd been like, fantastic, you can finance the rest of your life. You're done.
Yeah.
Like, you've hit it, you're good. Since I have actually gone through, since I am an entrepreneur, I work for entrepreneurs, I've been forced to look at and say, okay, how the hell do I get food on the table this week? Numbers on social media, they're great bragging points. That's about it. They are not the actual points. If you have, I'm sure you're very familiar with this concept of 1,000 true fans.
Oh yeah, Kevin Kelly. Yep.
Exactly. I mean, I know you're sure of it. I've heard you talk about it quite a few times. If you have 1,000 people who are truly dedicated to you, 1,000, that's not much. I have 3 times that of friends on Facebook alone.
Let me flip this a little.
Yeah.
We all know somebody who only had 12. JC, man. Jesus only had 12 true fans. He didn't have 1,000 true fans. And look what he did, right?
That is a fucking good point, and I feel like that's appropriate time to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like, we all think we need, like, I need 1 million Instagram followers. And he only had 12, dude.
I think it's more about...
And he didn't have the internet.
Yeah. It's literally more about the value that you give people as opposed to the numbers on your social media accounts.
It's fascinating to me.
It's so fascinating.
This guy just think it's fool's gold. And you put it very well. Like, there's before and after. Before you thought, 7 million, I could finance the rest of my life. And after, like, once you're really in the trenches doing the work, you realize, no, you know what? I got to go knock on doors and I got to go see people face to face. And I think the most valuable thing you can have today is an email list.
Absolutely.
You know, so the example I give you is when I launched my last book, which you have right there, Stadium Status, there was this social media app called Thunderclap. I don't know if you're familiar with
Very
Thunderclap.
familiar, yeah.
So, like, basically, you can invite all your followers to give Thunderclap permissions for people who don't know what we're talking about. Give Thunderclap permission to post one tweet on a specific day and time automatically from their account. You're like giving them permission to do one tweet, not hijack your whole account and just start posting and sharing images or anything. One thing, you know? And what I find fascinating with it is the amount of people that you're able to reach doing that. So I used Thunderclap for my book launch, and I had the president and founder of Thunderclap reach out to me afterwards and say, hey, just wanted to, thank you for using the platform. Wanted to see how your book launch went and what you thought of everything.
That's great service.
I'm like, well, thanks. Wow. I'm surprised to hear from you. He's like, well, you shouldn't be. You had like one of the most widely successful Thunderclap campaigns for any book, like right behind like Tim Ferriss and 4 Hour Work Week or whatever.
Yeah.
And so what I reached, and I don't share this to impress anyone. I share it to impress upon them. Like, it's really a false diagnostic. We reached like 27 million people in 22 different countries, 6 of the 7, there's 7 continents, right? 6 of the 7 continents. And you'd have thought that would result in a ton of sales, right? Yeah, that must have. Look how many people he reached
All
with
the numbers.
a tweet that said John Brubaker at Coach Bru's new book Stadium Status is out. Click here to buy it. Like, right? You'd think that would reach a ton of people. Well, at that same time, 27 million people, 22 countries, 6 of 7 continents. I also had an email list of about 10,000 people.
So pretty solid, yeah.
It's, in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of a small list.
It's not too bad, yeah.
But so I had 10,000 readers who opted in voluntarily to get my newsletter once a week at that time. And I used a very different, I used a unique URL to offer the book to them versus the URL I used to offer it on social media to Thunderclap, just to measure like, okay, what's my ROI on these different platforms? And the unique URL I use for my email list exponentially outperformed the sales. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was just staggering. Like, wow, I wasted a lot of time on social media. It was staggering how much more that email list outperformed it. And it's still electronic, but there's a person-to-person, one-to-one connection where they voluntarily opted in and they wanted to hear from me and hear from me on a regular basis. So there's an element of trust. There's an element of relationship building. There's all this social equity you get that you don't get from a 140 character tweet or posting, stupid cat video on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. And I just think so many people are building their house on, this is it a metaphor or an analogy? They're building their house on real estate they don't own when they're trying to build a business on social media or through almost exclusively through social media. So that was an eye opener for me. Like you said, like what pays the bills? Likes, Facebook likes don't pay the mortgage.
Exactly.
What really does?
That's beautiful. That's so true. It's so true. Like as a musician, I can even apply it to that. Like as a musician for almost a decade.
Let me stop you. Okay? I want to hear the story, but I want to know if I can get you a cup of coffee. Because while you're telling this, I really want another cup of coffee. Can I get you a cup of coffee while I am up and you're telling me this story?
Let's do it.
Right.
Let's do it. I'm going to keep talking.
Tell the story.
So as a musician, that was a big thing for years. I was a musician, played out for almost a decade, opened for a lot of pretty good bands. Devil Wears Prada. If you're in the hardcore scene, you know a lot of these bands. And it was just Devil Wears Prada was one of the bigger ones that I loved anyway. But what you'd realize is all of these venues would be like, oh yeah, we have this great thing. We're going to have all of these impressions. You're going to be able to open. No, we can't pay you, but we have all of these impressions that you can do. You can meet all these different people. And like for the first couple years as a band, we were so stoked on that. We're like, yes, this is exactly what we want. Get in front of as many people. And then you realize that is not what pays the bills. What pays the bills and the shows. Ooh, you gave me the big cup. Thank you.
I gave you the Starbucks cup.
Oh, that's beautiful. We do support. So yeah, it's good and hot.
Exposure's one thing early on, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, you're like, I'm cool with that if I can take that exposure to the bank.
Yeah.
And they'll accept, oh, you want to give me 10,000 page views instead of like cash for your mortgage payment this month? Sure, we'll take that.
If only.
Like the day that I can deposit page views or quote exposure, I'm cool with just getting exposure, right?
Do you think any company will start that? Do you think a company will start exchanging true monetary value for things like exposure or anything like that? Or is that essentially buying followers? Is that what we do when we buy followers?
Yeah, I think that. So this is a rabbit hole that I want to go down in a second. But this is about you, and I want to ask you. The music industry. I'm fascinated by the parallels between the music industry and my work as a professional speaker and an author. Like those two industries mirror one another
so much.
In that, like, people aren't buying CDs anymore. They're barely buying books. They're streaming music for free most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
And they're getting like 97-cent Kindles.
Yep.
And my royalty on that is essentially essentially exposure,
Essentially, yeah.
So how do you actually monetize that? You go out on tour and artists make their money touring.
That's a huge
I make my money
aspect
not as selling books, but in speaking and sharing verbally in person, sharing the message from the book.
Yeah.
What have you seen? Because you grew up in an era where you bought music, but you became a musician and tried to monetize it and went out on the road and toured in an era when people weren't buying.
It's true.
albums or cassettes or 8-track tapes, if you even know what that is, or CDs.
Yeah.
You know, they're getting, you know, Pandora and Spotify or YouTube for free and maybe paying $1 for an iTunes track.
Yeah.
What have you seen and what's working for people out there?
Because
I'm really this is about reinventing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up. So there's actually a couple ways. Typically, the typical musician, especially when they look at social media, they are obsessed. And I was obsessed with the numbers. Oh, I want this many likes. I want this many followers.
Well, it helps you get a record deal, I imagine, at some point if you're early on in your career. Yeah.
It helps you build some credibility. And I'm not going to bash that. No. There is a credibility behind it. Yep. There is this band called Bless the Fall. And I think I can say this. I became good friends with one of their drummers. Mm-hmm. This was, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago. Back even when social media was less than it is now. But this just goes to show you. They were on tour. They were signed this huge band. They were like a new band, like a new metal band, but reproducing a bunch of like 80s metal.
So like they're the hot new band though.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were like a big deal. Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of likes on all these social media, signed to multiple record deals on international tours. Guess how much money they put in their pocket? Less than $20 a day.
Wow.
That's literally what they got paid.
Yeah, I remember it's deceiving because
it's so deceiving.
You know, it's the lights and the glitz and the glamour and, you know, the appearance of fame.
Yep.
I was talking with the guy he's in Nova Scotia. He's a radio programmer. He's also a speaker and author, radio programmer for a group of rock stations. Somehow we got on the topic of this very discussion, and he said, yeah, you have any idea how much Lady Gaga's guitarist makes? I'm like, huh? He's like, probably $40,000, $50,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think so much more.
Not like 401k health plan or anything.
No,
like
so that drops it dramatically.
You're a hired gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're really on your own. You're a lone ranger in a band.
Yeah.
But it was just so fascinating because it's an industry that's really evolving and being forced to change because of technology. You know, there's disruption.
Yep.
So yeah, I was always curious your experience with that.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that can happen is, and this is really interesting, one of the best things that can happen in the music industry, and as well as like, if you're an author, if you're a speaker, is diversifying your income. And I'm sure you absolutely agree with this. As a musician, it used to be that if you showed up, if you played a show, that there was such a minimal amount of shows that came through that if you played a show somewhere, everyone was going to go, everyone was going to buy because you're the only band there. And you're the big name. You're coming in from a different state. You must be this great big thing. Nowadays, with social media, with the internet, you can find any band anywhere. You can find any speaker, any author, anywhere. And so you have to find different ways. As a musician, you can monetize it in so many different ways, through lessons, virtual lessons, through Skype, through in person, through
your own events.
Events, that's huge.
Merch.
I was going to save that one for last. It's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
it's the only way you make money.
So if you're an established artist, your number one revenue is probably hard ticket sales. Number two is probably merch.
Merch is the most.
Because you got margin.
Yeah.
It's tangible physical product. And a lot of times is like, it's also like a walking, talking billboard for your brand.
Absolutely.
If it's a t-shirt or a hat or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like underestimated.
So underestimated.
Yeah.
Underestimated.
Yeah. It's just so fascinating because it is music. It is my profession as well. But it's also a lot of other professions, and then kind of there's like the ripple effect. There's just so many more channels now, so many more ways to consume music, so many more ways to consume, you know, the printed word, the spoken word, movies. Like think about like network TV a bunch of years ago. There are 3-4 channels. Now there are 300-400.
Absolutely.
You can get cable, you can get satellite, you can get Netflix, like Hulu, everything. So much clutter. How do you stand out? How do you differentiate?
I would say niching down. would be the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to really stand out, at least at first.
It kind of brings us back to the beginning of the conversation. Be polarizing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you can figure out your niche, if you can find what you do best and the type of people that you serve the absolute best, the people who get served by you better than they get served by anyone else, treated better than anywhere else, then you will become the big fish in that small pond. And from there, you can venture out, you can grow if you need to. And if you set up different income streams, fantastic. But if you don't niche down and if you don't get polarizing in order to do that, then you just will not grow. There's way too much information out there, but not
especially
enough
today.
knowledge.
You can't afford not to.
You can't afford not to.
And it might seem scary to do. I think the alternative is scarier.
Absolutely.
It's scarier not doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you don't niche down, then you are going to get lost in the crowd. And it's crazy to think about that. Yeah. Well, I know your daughter arrived here, so I'm gonna call this
Cool.
Mr. John, Mr. Coach Brew.
Awesome
as
coming
you go
on
by.
here. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Let's do this again on my podcast.
I would absolutely love that.
That'd be
I would be
awesome.
honored.
So when I get set up in the new office, you'll be one of the first guests on live and in living color.
Live and in living color. I'm glad I won't be
Isn't
in dead
that kind of
color.
redundant?
It is so redundant.
You know, why do people say that?
I have
then?
no idea. If you think about it, this one's been really driving me nuts.
Hang on.
Yeah?
Before live and in living color,
Yep.
because that would imply like color TV.
Yeah.
Did people say live and in black and white?
I bet they did. I
bet they
you're right.
didn't.
What? Oh, because it was just assumed it was black and white.
Because there's no,
there's no-
you didn't know otherwise.
There's nothing to compare it to.
But once there was color, did anyone really do the black and white thing? Nah, not really. No. I don't know. It makes no sense.
Maybe in the
Why
first
do people
few
say
years.
that?
Maybe in the first few years it was a marketing thing to get people hooked on it.
Those damn early adopters.
I know. What drives me nuts right now is to say, oh, you can have your cake and eat it too. It's like, of course I can have my cake. And if it's my cake, of course I can eat it. The original saying, if you look back into it, this is interesting.
It's Kate and Edith too, and they're talking about a threesome.
It's exactly what it was.
Kate
How
and
did
Edith.
you know?
Yeah.
Yes. The original saying is, you can't eat your cake and have it too. That makes a lot more sense. I can't take my cake and I can't eat it and also have it, as opposed to I can't have it, like set aside, this is my cake and eat it.
But somehow that's just become...
This has become the way we say it now.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
That's the original fake news right there.
Thank you.
It really is.
It has been happening for decades. I was actually just I love talking with my parents about this, oddly enough. They are, very open-minded, very interesting people. And they brought this up. How would you define fake news? Essentially, it's anything. Yeah, exactly. What if what you believe is true? I don't believe. Then I define what you believe to be true as fake.
No, that doesn't fit my narrative, Gabe.
Hit me.
No, I think anything that you can't look up on urbandictionary.com probably has to be fake news.
100% agree.
That's my
Completely agree.
it's my Webster's dictionary. That's my encyclopedia today. What's Wikipedia? Yeah, I'm Urban Dictionary, man.
That's what I'm talking about. On that note, we're going to call it On That Note. Thank you so much, John. This has been a pleasure.